Welcome. This week I will be profiling 10 liturgical fragrances. Call them ecclesiastical, devotional, even Kabbalistic. These are churchy fragrances. But no matter what the denomination, they may evoke the incense that would be burned in a place of worship or ritual. So let's get this started. Without further ado, I am going to kick things off with this one. This is Unum Lavs, and Unum Lavs was composed by Filippo Sorcinelli. It is a far-reaching, diffusive, aldehydic incense. It's almost Kabbalistic in feel, at once familiar, but also alien. It's a portrayal of ego annihilation through scent. So, where do I end and the scent begins? When wearing this, I think of how my attachments run deep and holy, and Lavs is making me question them. What are we holding on to? A sense of longing? Hope? Or is it hopelessness that we lean into through the incense smoke, surrounded by an unadorned quarter, to draw attention to what lies between the thoughts and the desires? There is a spare, solemn cloud that opens me up to the reality of impermanence. There are ashes. That is the reality of life. There will be ashes. Lavs captures the beauty of something that may seem so morose and hard to embrace, and makes it just a bit easier, perhaps, to confront. Even the conifers will lose their needles one day. We smell them as they are today, still alive, but the ashes waft through. The trees that give us aromatic resins one day will also fade, like all living beings will. We hold them dear today. We hold them in stillness. We honor them. We honor the here and now, moment by moment. This fulsome harvest is not everlasting. Relish it today. We would be remiss without including this now iconic incense fragrance, Incense Avignon from Series 3 Incense, Comme de Garcons, composed by Bertrand Duchefort. Avignon has become the reference incense for fragrance enthusiasts, and it's hard to deny that compositionally it is evocative of a thurible swaying amongst the devoted in a Catholic church. It is a bit more than that, though, as it has elements that make it more impressionistic, more perfume than purely a novel incense facsimile. We're not talking a Demeter fragrance here. Chamomile is the top note through the heart, and it lends a certain ineffable quality that reminds me of its use in aromatics elixir. Soothing and almost importing a pastoral feel that contrasts with stark, stony chill of olibanum and olemi, overdosed in Avignon. The top with the coniferous spiky aldehyde C12, that's an aliphatic aldehyde of the famous sparkling aldehydes. They also lend to this chill that is soon warmed over by myrrh, labdanum, and what I can detect as cistus. So to clarify, the oil from the leaves rather than the resin of cistus lindanifer is cistus. It can be the essential oil or it can be the absolute. And it has a slightly different scent profile that is a bit more top-heavy and has a sweeter, somewhat more medicinal herbal timbre to it. In spite of the isoe super that lifts everything in Avignon, to my nose, it's impressively imbued with naturals. The mildest shade of animalic, dry, vegetal ambret musk in the base makes for a readily comforting skin set in the dry down. I now realize that this will be in my collection as not merely a reference, but a true joy to wear. The cold yields to warm throughout its development, making it not quite as linear as has been suggested by others. A lot of folks seem to think that. And it surely does suit me to a T during this snowy day in New England. Next is Trois, released in 1975 from Serge Calugin. Forgive me if I have not got the pronunciation correct. He was the in-house perfumer for Diptyque. I believe he also formulated their iconic candles early on. And this is my absolute favorite from Diptyque. I actually learned of this through Katie Puckrick of Katie Puckrick Smells. She does a video of it, or at least she does cover it in one of her collection videos. This is a molybdenum resinoid overdose with a healthy helping of myrrh and the smell of not only pine sap, but of pine needles, both fresh and the desiccated fallen ones on the forest floor. My nose detects the rosemary, myrtle, and caraway that add this dimension, and all great compliments to the molybdenum and myrrh. And it's the olfactory embodiment of crepuscule in the woods. If you don't know what crepuscule is, it is just a more florid word for dusk or twilight. Solemn, sacred, and divine. It's a stirring creation, and I'm glad that it is still in production. This older bottle is gorgeous. I found it for a song, luckily online. Never smelled the more recent bottles, but I've thought about doing a backup bottle because I don't know how much longer something like this will stick around. So it might be a good idea. Next is La Couche du Diable from Serge Lutens. This one is really something. The old adage goes, the devil is in the details. The devil also apparently rests in his bed waiting for you to allow him to arise in your mind. Now, some people do a literal translation of the devil's diaper, but I am fairly certain that was not Christopher Sheldrake's intention. But I digress. We all seem to think that that if there was a fragrance to reflect what seems to be such a parable, the devil is in the details, it would smell offensive. Well, some folks seem to think so anyhow, given a number of other reviews I've read on this. But no, this smells beautiful, if not dark, brooding, and beguiling. I think more of Mara and Buddhism, and the fears that arise, particularly the existential, those of loss, of death, of ceasing to exist. We all find ways to distract ourselves, from hiding from the truth, running away from it, resisting those feelings, those fears. And we do so through manifesting behaviors, greed, gluttony, sensuality, consumption, delusion. Perhaps it's a stretch for me to suggest that Christopher Sheldrake wanted La Couche du Diable to represent the embodiment of this. After all, did Guerlain and the perfumers behind the release really intended samsara to represent the cycle of suffering? This fragrance, though, as I wear it and reflect during tenuous times, it has me meditating on the relationship I have with scent, transcending fragrance itself. How does it distract me? How does it help me to tune in and befriend difficult feelings? There's a lining of tangerines and citruses, this periphery of light with the depths of laudanum accord, which eclipses all else. Any other element here serves as an accent or shading at most. I believe Sheldrake might have used a natural derivative of Cistus labdanum produced by Biolan, Biolandes, called hydrocarboresin. I have a generous amount of it as I adore it. It's a perfume in itself, so I have it in my perfumer's organ. It is at the other end of the spectrum from, say, a libidinum resin. It is unctuous, resinous, and smoky, with the sweeter highlights of cistus contrasting with the leathery and organic backbone of the fragrance. The whole composition feels like viewing brightly hued stained glass windows against the negative space of a dim church interior. Light, dark, story of life. So facing the devil in its bed means stopping. And this fragrance does make me stop. And this fragrance is tender and real. It's good stuff. Next, we move into the direction of ceremonial, perhaps even funereal. We have Passage d'Enfer. This was released in 1999, composed by Olivia Jacobetti. Rather fortunate to have run across this older formulation hexagonal bottle of Jacobetti's Passage d'Enfer. And while I can't speak for the subsequent formulations, I haven't tried them, what I have in my possession is a staggering beauty. The inclusion of lily and muguet really sends the olibinum in a new direction, as if I'm on a veranda with lit incense on an early May day. It reminds me of pondering the passage of time through seasons, the thawing of snow, and spring ephemerals pushing through to make their brief, gentle appearance, bearers of fragility and life. This passage to hell, which is what Passage d'Enfer translates to from French, it feels to me more like a waking moment of beauty in both joy and suffering, night and day, light and dark. Perhaps this passage is more to confront the reality that hell is created in our own minds. And once we come face to face, we are liberated. And here we are on the other side, a relief, a true conclusion that it isn't any real place at all. Maybe one would find this fragrance funereal, should they be in a frame of mind to reach for that association, or maybe they have ingrained scent associations. But for me, I find nothing sullen or grim about this beautiful, nuanced creation. There are these raw cedar and coniferous undertones. A musk as white as its flowers, vernal, fecund, luminous, almost opalescent. Still, delicate and truly personal, Passage d'Enfer is a fragrance for sitting and reflection, and goodness knows I need those in my life. Moving on to another similar beauty, staggering in its breathtaking beauty, is Relique d'Amour from Oriza à Legrand. So picture it. The courtyard is deep. The sky is overcast, much like it is today. The mossy stone-covered walls are covered with the rain of the early morning. The trees with their residing leaves have reached full saturation. The pines and the spruce sway and release their own pensive scents. And the chilled, staid air haunts the bones. The most beautiful dank draft greets me as I open the old wooden doors. Time has embedded so much joy and sorrow into these walls, into these pews, velvet and mildew, musty wood, chilled ghost-white lilies in the thurible of sacred smoke. The stained glass has shades of violet and crimson, cool greens and blues, hues, almost having a synesthetic effect. As you can imagine, Relique d'Amour isn't a bomb juice to wear out clubbing, not a beast mode, No drawers being dropped. Nothing that reeks of desperation or validation. Relique d'Amour commands your attention. It makes you go inward for once, which to the average fragrance wearer seems counterintuitive. Hear me out, though. There are fragrances that serve a purpose for which you may not yet even be aware exists. In my journey through scent, these dark horse scents end up making the strongest and most meaningful impressions on me. The experiment, this is an experiential sort of fragrance. It is the next level of understanding the depth, the range of scent, and how it evokes and elicits responses from deep within the spirit. Relique d'Amour is the real stronger with you. This is transcendental. So we move forward here to Javoy, La Liturgie des Heures, La Liturgie des Heures, composed by Jacques Fleury in 2011. I had a long love affair with conifer essential oils early in my perfume making journey. I compulsively purchased any kind that I could think of. Pines, spruces, firs, cypresses, junipers. I even located a larch essential oil, that conifer that loses its needles in the winter. In my naivete, I thought I could compose remarkable perfumes using all of these oils, but they're actually rather challenging to incorporate into a composition. As without a deft hand, they can make a blend come off as a functional cleaning product rather than a forest fantasy. So with La Liturgie des Heures, I have at once found a fragrance that uses conifer oils of a sizable quantity that do impart this forest fantasy, this being one of a temple. It's deep. This temple is deep within these tall trees, with snow melting off the boughs on a sunny day. And here, Jacques Fleury seems to rely more so on these oils than the typical aldehyde C12 M&A. That green balsamic pine needle fresh allopathic aldehyde that I mentioned earlier that is used in Avignon. He uses these oils to exalt the frankincense accord. The C12 M&A here, it's there, but it's not overdosed as with other incense fragrances. And it allows these coniferous nuances to really sing. This is indeed more of a forest green incense, perhaps more than some can handle, as some noses seem to detect a musty mildew facet. Now, I think I know what they mean, but I interpret this as a rawness and realness of resins that are not particularly melt-in-your-mouth sweet or classically aromatic. And in this age where sweet depth is not grounding a fragrance, it may be interpreted as dank and hollow. And it's a shame, but I can't convince others to enjoy this, but I surely do. I'm also someone who loves to get my hands dirty in nature, so take that as you will. Hey, did you notice that I actually have little tiny pine trees on my shirt? There's even some deer if you look really closely. When the conifers and the lemon terpenic frankincense in this, they settle, what remains is more the heart of a libinum, some myrrh, and a bittersweet amber. And I wonder if Robert Tett's Bois de l'Inde base is used here, as the dry down reminds me so much of it. So Bois de l'Inde is a co-extraction of French pine resinoid with a Virginian cedarwood oil. And the odor has this kind of fir balsam undertone, fruity blackcurrant top note. It imparts a pine trees forest headspace. It is one of my all-time favorite bases. Once again, it's like a perfume in itself. And that whole sensation is here. Or perhaps Fleury constructed his own base that reminds me of it. Whatever alchemy he uses does warm my heart, and I am happy I allowed myself to get well acquainted with LLDH to fully understand it and embrace it. Here we have Messe de Minuit from Etro. This was really originally released in 1994, and I know that the earlier versions are highly sought for much the same reasons, curiously enough and coincidentally, as La Liturgie des Heures. A mustiness, a mildewiness, a very ancient cellar kind of vibe in the older bottles. And truthfully, I've never tried, I'd never experienced or sampled the older versions of this. I was introduced to Messe de Minuit through more recent versions of it, and Messe de Minuit, Midnight Mass, is a bit brighter than the others we've discussed so far. So it captures the essence of spaces that have seen so much through time and have the sediment of human presence and history. I imagine antiquity of all sorts, the somber sweetness of wooden spaces, of curio cabinets and Saratoga trunks, literature from days of yore, faded memories, faded dreams. There's also an element of solemn beauty that comes from the interior of places of worship and the incenses that have enveloped closures and left their imprint for ages, the way they embed over time. The myrrh and the labdanum certainly lend to that impression. The much needed contrast in Messe de Minuit is the light through the rose window, the radiance of the stained glass, courtesy of the citrus and the petitgrain, bringing a dimension that is usually absent in the more brooding incense fragrances that are in abundance. But here is the hope, the exaltation that is needed to bear the dark and uncertain, the duality that is beautiful, that duality of the spirit. Wear this for days where you want to be present, when you need a still point in life. Another sunnier and brighter and somewhat sweeter liturgical selection here is this. This is Legrand Imperial Apopanax. I would recommend getting the one with the cherubs, because this is the only one I know. This is the scent of angels, the bergamot and the orange and the lemon peel. Fanfare seamlessly transitioned into a crescendo of the fabled Apopanax resin. This is an exudate from the Commiphora erythrea tree. And the resin has a sensuous warmth, a sweetness of toffee contrasted with bitter, leafy herbal undertones, powdery, effulgent, yet rich, mythic. It is believed that King Solomon regarded Apopanax as the noblest of incense gums. So here the Apopanax has support from benzoin, labdanum, sandalwood, all enhancing the facets of the resin with their shared qualities, all in congress to help exalt the king's resin. Naturally, there's this old world quality that might betray modern sensibilities, but this is what I live for, a retreat, some time to be under the spell of the scent, musing over all the rituals, worship, sorrows, and joy that accompany the burning of this incense gum, this Apopanax, that has magic, much as the holy resins of myrrh and frankincense. And lastly, we have the powerhouse choice of the liturgical fragrances. Robert Piguet's Casbah, released in 2012. I mean, this has Catholic, Orthodox, Buddhist monastery, all denominations rolled into one, all those incenses. I found this white label bottle, and it was because it was recommended. That apparently the black label is not as impressive, but they could be wrong. I could be wrong. I was smitten upon the first spray. I visualized the colors deep green and burgundy, and the wafts are rich and hypnotic to my nose. In the opening, I am greeted with musky, earthy angelica, black pepper, and a notable liturgical smoke with sweeter overtones of tobacco. This dries down to a persistent incense heart that has become woodier and more coniferous, somewhat damp, but also paradoxically dusty. A deep, abundant red cedar note is detected as well. So in the base, it is evident that the woody amber aromachem limbinol is used. But do not fear, do not fret. It's used tastefully to extend that incense sensation. And this is accompanied by a vetiver and this cola-like myrrh resin, which is not in the notes pyramid, but I just pick it up. I feel like it's there. It may very well be there. And this has performance for days, and it will be on your clothes for a long time, unless you really do give them a heavy laundering. So just be aware. But it's beautiful stuff. That's Casbah by Robert Piguet. So those are the 10 liturgical fragrances that I wanted to share with you all that I really enjoy and am happy to have in my collection. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell button so you can get further notifications, and leave a comment as to what your favorites are. Obviously, I don't have them all, and I don't love them all, but I love hearing other people's stories, and I'd like to get some feedback. It would be excellent. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this. Until next time, take care.